And we're live. Come on back. Vanessa,
Yes.
I want to open this and thank you for coming. But if we lose the viewers in the next 60 seconds, what's the one thing in their nutrition on a daily basis that they can remove or do to improve their lifestyle?
So the number one thing are basically processed foods. So things that are in a packet. And I know you guys probably are going to have a lot of questions about that, but that would be the number one thing. Most of the sugar that people consume, 90%, is found in these processed foods. So you cut that out, you're cutting out almost 90% of the sugar that you consume, which is a big deal.
And processed foods being like packaged things.
Yes. So processed foods are it's basically going to come packaged. It typically has salt and sugar and fat, and it has other like additives. So think about artificial sweeteners, artificial food coloring, emulsifiers, preservatives. So all these different ingredients that are exclusively used by the food industry.
Cool.
That's it.
You can wrap
We're
it up there.
Sounds good. So Vanessa, as I look at your business card,
Yes.
it's got a couple of designations behind it. And so if you can tell us what that is, it has an MS and an RD. So what exactly is the MS?
So the MS, that's a Master's in Nutritional Science.
Okay.
So it took me, I did a bachelor's and then 2 years after got my master's. And then the RD, that's a registered dietitian designation. So I had to complete my bachelor's. I did a whole year of like internship, 1,200 hours, and I took a state exam.
A state exam.
Yeah.
So that's like a state designation? Or...
Yeah, it's a really well-known nutrition credential.
Okay.
If you go to see a nutritionist in a hospital setting or clinical setting, you're most likely seeing a dietitian.
Okay.
Yeah.
Very good, very good. Well, one of the things that we wanted to ask you is, with especially lately, when we're all thinking about our health and the things that we consume and how healthy everything is. So I've been gravitating towards the areas of the supermarkets that say organic. So if I go to something that says organic, am I guaranteed to get something good for myself? Or is just the word organic being thrown around? What do you think?
So there's two different things there. So one thing is looking at the organic food label. So it is regulated by the Food and Drug Administration. So it's regulated by our government. So if you see a food item that has the organic seal, you're getting something that doesn't have pesticides. So it's higher quality in terms of the processing, right? There wasn't any like pesticides sprayed. Organic also means non-GMO. So if you don't want any genetically modified organisms or in your food, you're also getting that. Now, whether it's a better food for you or not, it depends. You can get organic broccoli. We can look at broccoli. Broccoli is healthy, right? It's a vegetable. You can also purchase organic cookies. So it's organic, so it doesn't have pesticides, it's not GMO. They're still cookies, right? So you kind of have to look at it in like break it down basically in different sections. But this is very common and it's really interesting because a lot of the designations, a lot of these things that you find in a food product, they are supposed to help the consumer make better choices. Some of these labels that you're going to see, whether it's the organic food label, whether it's grass-fed or free range, and eggs, whether it's no sugar added, whatever.
So
Some of these are regulated by the government and some of them are not. They're more like marketing
okay.
from the food industry.
So if I see something that says organic,
Yes.
what that really means is that it has no pesticide and no GMO.
Correct.
But it could have a high level of sugar or high concentration
Correct.
of sugar.
Correct. Yeah.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay. So we because it's so confusing.
Yeah.
Especially lately when
Yeah.
we're trying to get into it to the health food industry type of thing. So if I'm going in the direction of the organic area of the supermarket, I'm in the right direction as long as I know that it's no pesticide, no GMO, But then I have to look at the label, the ingredients label.
Correct.
Okay. And on the ingredients label, okay, what, of course, depending on the product that I'm looking for example, the vegetable broccoli that you said, that would be a healthy thing, correct? Because there's no way to alter that because
Correct.
I'm already in the organic area.
Correct. Yeah.
But for example, if you're looking for peanut butter, let's say,
Yes.
organic peanut butter, now you have a whole label to contend with, right?
Yeah. Yeah. Um, yeah, and we can get into it. So the label is confusing. It's designed to be confusing, and we can get into that. But when you look at a food product, you're looking at two things. One thing is the nutrition, and the other thing is the quality of the ingredients. Okay?
Okay.
So, like with the broccoli example, so we know broccoli is a vegetable, it's healthy. It kind of ends there. It gets complicated when you're looking at a food product. So, you brought up peanut butter.
Yeah.
Okay. So peanut butter, you can look at it and it could be organic. Feel good about that. Then you want to look at the ingredient list. So the number one thing to do is just, if you're able to pronounce the ingredients and you know what those ingredients are, you're kind of in the safe zone. That's like the easiest way that I can kind of break it down.
If you're
What
able to
would be-
pronounce them.
What
If
would
you're
be
able
an
to
example?
pronounce them. Okay, so if we go into peanut butter, you should only have one or two ingredients. That's peanuts and salt. Or salt, if the peanut butter has salt.
Okay.
That's it. So when you look at the peanut butters available in the grocery store, they have hydrogenated oils. They can have sugar added. So they can have preservatives. So you don't need these ingredients. That the more that you have these ingredients, the more processed that it is.
Okay.
So that's what you want to look for. Yeah.
Okay. And it still could be organic, but still have those
Correct.
ingredients.
Yeah. Yes.
Interesting, because those
And-
ingredients are not necessarily organic per se. They're not natural, right?
No, like most of those like preservatives, emulsifiers, artificial sweeteners, artificial food colors, those are mostly made in a lab. So it could be like a chemical, or it could be an oil that's, hydrogenated. That just means that the product's going to have a longer shelf life, but that oil is very inflammatory. But it's used by the food industry, right? Because obviously if you have, the thing about food is if you have produce like broccoli and apples, veggies, you have to sell those fast or they're going to go bad, and there goes your money, there goes your profit. But what if you could make food, or make something, call it food, that can last you for a very long time, right? The shelf life.
Right.
And it's going to bring more money and all that. And that's what food companies do. And I think that's where people are confused. Like, as consumers, like, I've been confused even with the designations that you've shared that I have. Because even though I have a lot of schooling and a lot of training, I wasn't prepared, or I didn't learn about, like, the food industry and like, the food that we are sold.
So that's what I mean. But if the average guy or lady goes into the supermarket, it's heading down to the organic area. Now that you are in the organic area, now you're supposed to look at the ingredients label. And the simpler it is, the better it is for you.
Correct.
Like you said, if you can pronounce these things, like the hydrogenated oil and stuff like that, those are hard things to.
Yeah.
You don't want
And you
that.
don't really know what those are, correct?
Right. So you
Yeah.
don't want that kind of stuff.
Yeah. Yeah, but so I would advise people to try to stay away from processed foods. I mean, that was what you guys asked me at the beginning. If there's one thing that I would recommend for people, is to start to recognize that the processed foods, which are packaged foods that have all these added ingredients and salt, sugar, and fat, are what's causing like obesity and diabetes and high blood pressure and all these things. And they are confusing. So the food industry likes to put these labels and, different things on the food product to make us feel better about them. But it's just confusing because at the end of the day, they're highly processed.
Mm-hmm.
And it's not that, you should avoid, like, if you like chocolate or chips or ice cream, that's fine. You can enjoy that, but it's not an every day, every week sort of thing, in my opinion.
So when you say processed foods, the things that comes to mind is like the hams that come packaged, or salamis and stuff like that. Is that
That
They
also
can.
counts as processed foods. But think about like frozen foods. That counts. Cookies, processed breads, that counts. The ice cream, cereal, breakfast cereal, all of those different things that um, it's very hard. Basically, if you buy a product and you look at the ingredients and you try to go purchase those ingredients and remake it, if you're not able to do that, then that is ultra processed. Think about Oreo cookies, think about Cheez-Its, which are like my favorite. Um,
Mhm.
those are highly processed, and it's just they're not good for us.
S-
So,
So I always like to give them, let's say, an alternative. So, like, you're eating cereal every morning. I was doing that. That was my breakfast cereal with a banana in it. Or your kids are eating cereal every morning.
mhm.
What could they replace it with? Is it an organic cereal, or would it be even something else that you would recommend that they replace? Let's say cereal. Let's attack that one, for example.
Yeah. So cereal, you can try to find a cereal that has less sugar. Everybody's in different phases, right? So if you're eating something that has a bunch of sugar, you can try to find one with less sugar. You can look at the ingredient list. If it has less than 10 ingredients, you're doing a good job. The less, the better. If you're able to pronounce those ingredients, that's better. So that can be an option. Choose a better cereal. Even though I've looked at a lot of cereals and I can tell you like 98% of them are no good. There's just a bunch of sugar. But you can try if you wanted to stick with cereal. You can also swap it for like, I don't know, you could do chia pudding. That's something that like people like to replace. Or you can, if eggs don't increase your cholesterol, you can have egg based, breakfast. You can use yogurt as well. If you're buying a yogurt that doesn't have added sugars, do that. Add nuts and seeds. That increases protein. That's another option that we can do.
But kids love cereal
Kids love cereal, and
and
that
Pop Tarts.
that kind of yeah, because it has sugar, right? And sugar, even though I'm saying like yeah, I think we all know that sugar isn't healthy. I think what people don't know is the amount of sugar that is in food products, and um, that sugar not only does it cause you to gain weight and like all these like health conditions, but a lot of our food that shouldn't have sugar has sugar. So like tomato sauce, or cereal, bread, yogurt. I said yogurt, like you can buy yogurt for breakfast, but you can easily buy a yogurt with a bunch of added sugar, and you're in the same spot. But the food industry knows that we like sugar, so they add sugar to a lot of the foods, and then that makes our taste buds used to that sugar, that like sweet flavor, and it makes it harder for people to, when they want to like eat healthier, like choose something else. Um, I don't know why we love sugar, but we do, and like kids love sugar too. If we're susceptible to it, they're even more susceptible to it. Like we're not supposed to feed sugar to kids until they're at least 2 years old. Um, but you see a lot of food products, for kids that have a ton of sugar. So you're right, kids do love sugar. But I think as, you know, parents or like future parents, you have to be aware of that, and not try to not feed the kid, processed sugar. Give him fruit. Fruit has natural sugar, but it also comes with fiber and vitamins and minerals that are going to be better, for the kid. But it's so interesting, how a lot of when you look at these different companies, which I love businesses, like I don't have anything against, the food industry or anything like that. Um, but it's just really interesting how much marketing dollars they put into getting us to buy more of their products, because that's what they're in business for, which is fine. But it's just that their product is causing a lot of, or contributing to, or maybe contributing to a lot of like, health issues. So that's where we have to pay attention. It's not just cute that the kid likes sugar. He could end up with obesity or diabetes.
So if you're like, let's say, the devil's advocate,
Yeah.
we could say that everything contributes to
Yeah.
some form or another, right? So
Yeah, and it's so interesting because I think it does. And there's a lot of things at play. Like, I think you have to look at your environment. Like, if you live in an environment where there's a lot of fast food, where you go to a grocery store that has a bunch of these packaged, foods, you don't have fruit and vegetables to pick from, then you're kind of a product of your environment. If you don't have parks in your city, then somebody can say you should exercise, you should avoid these foods. But if you can't avoid them, maybe because financially that's the only thing you can buy, or that's just where you live. I mean,
That's the other thing. So
Yeah.
organic
Challenge.
is usually more expensive
Yeah.
than,
Yeah.
right?
yeah, it is. So that's the other thing. And when you look at products that are better for you, they're more expensive than products that are highly processed. So the other thing too is the food companies, their number one goal is to get us to buy more of their food. Their number one goal is not to improve our health. And I think that's also where people get a little confused, and they're a bit shocked when they see that it says that it's good for heart health, but it has a bunch of sugar. It's just people are in awe, but know that they're trying to sell you a food product. They're not trying to improve your health. Just know that. I lost my train of thought where I
No,
was
that's
going
okay.
with that.
That's all right.
Um,
So in other words, okay, I hear what you're saying. We just
Yeah.
need to work some kind of balance. Like for example, maybe some meat, vegetable, uh, you know,
you know,
fruit, right? Have some kind of balance for your diet, right? Now you said something that was interesting. You said you can replace it with eggs if the eggs do not raise your cholesterol. So here's what I want. I've been listening to Joe Rogan talk a lot about he takes really good care of his health. And Joe Rogan says, hey, you know what? The best source of protein that you can get is, you get a bunch of chickens and let them lay a bunch of eggs, and you eat eggs.
Yeah.
And you can eat eggs every day.
yeah.
Now, the, is that advisable? Eat eggs every day, or do you have to check your cholesterol level on your egg intake?
Yeah, so you do have to check your cholesterol levels to see if eggs increase your cholesterol. So 1 out of 3 people will see a increase in their blood cholesterol from consuming eggs. Eggs is one of the highest foods in that has cholesterol. So it just depends. I think that's why nutrition is so confusing, because it might work for you and it might not work for you. But as long as you're on top of your labs and can verify.
Okay, so that brings me to another question. How often? Is it every 90 days that you make a change? For example, if you took on a client or a patient,
Yeah.
and you started this particular person on a trajectory, how I would imagine you do what? You do labs before so that you can have
You have a baseline.
a baseline, and then when would the next labs be
You
done?
want to test at month 3 or month 4.
On month 3 or 4?
Yeah.
After you start them on some
Yeah.
some kind of nutritional.
Yeah.
Okay, excellent. So
Now, he's talking about organic. I heard some people say, I grew up and I just went to the store and I drank out of a hose and all
Yeah.
this stuff. I don't need to eat organic. I came out okay. What do you respond to those people?
Yeah, like you're probably right, because the glyphosate, which is Roundup, which is a pesticide, that was created like in 1971, like early 1970s, and that's when a couple years after it went into the market. So if you were born before that, then yeah, you didn't have this pesticide in your food, and you're probably okay. But moving forward from the 1970s, we do have Roundup, and it's used in a lot of crops, so that could be the difference. And the thing too is that our food has changed so much. Like before World War II, people used to eat more whole foods. There really wasn't this conversation about processed foods, because people used to cook at home, and an apple was an apple and a pear was a pear, and we weren't confused, and there was not as many food products as there is today. So that's something different. Also, we had a change from like women staying at home to women being able to work. So about 80% of women are in the workforce now.
that's the problem. No, I'm
Which
just
is a
kidding.
good
I'm just
thing.
kidding.
But when we went into the workforce, then who's home
Cooking. Nobody. Because the
Nobody.
guys aren't doing it.
The guys aren't doing it, which is fine, right? Maybe we could have made a plan or something. But that's when the food industry came in. It's like, okay, we'll take over. we'll give you these ready to heat up meals. We'll, you'll be
Yeah.
fine. Go work, and we'll do that for you.
TV dinner, all
TV
that
dinners,
stuff.
all of that started during that time because, women needed that support, I guess. So the food industry came in and did that. And I don't know, I wasn't there during that time, obviously, but maybe at that time those meals, ready to eat meals, were more wholesome and were more whole food. But we fast forward to today and they're not, right? And we're still kind of in that spot where nobody has time to cook. There's a lot of people who don't know how to cook. We're eating out a lot more.
Sure.
We go to the grocery store and 75% of the food in the grocery store is packaged. We're confused by the food label, and that's, by design, because the food label was actually invented in the 1990s. The After like the 1960s, consumers wanted more transparency in terms of like what foods are we buying, in the grocery store, because there wasn't any, government regulation on what food companies could put on the food packet. So consumers just wanted to know. So during the 1960s, there was a food, conference at the White House, and they came up with this idea of the food label, which is interesting. There's a book that I'm reading that says that during that meeting, there was the VP of Monsanto, who was kind of head of this conference, and that's where the idea of the food label came in.
Okay.
And for those of you guys who don't know, Monsanto is the one that owns Roundup, glyphosate, and the GMO seeds. There was also a lawyer in this group that ended up helping the FDA in the 1990s develop the nutrition label. So the nutrition label is confusing because it's kind of like by design in a way, because during that time when they were developing the label, the food companies were very welcoming of the label because they wanted to contribute to what should be on this label. And I think everybody knows what a label is, right? Where it has the calories and the fat and the sugar. But the FDA was kind of confused in terms of like, what information do we put on this label? Because before World War II, a lot of people were malnourished. And during this time in the 1990s, we were still malnourished, but we were more overweight, but we still didn't have enough vitamins and minerals.
In the 1990s?
Yeah.
Really? I thought people were less overweight in the past and more overweight.
Well, from the 1960s to 1990s.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So we weren't eating like enough vitamins and all that stuff. So that's why in the label you see that it has calories and sugar and fat. But when you look at the label, it doesn't tell you whether that food product is healthy for you or not. So, for example, if you see a label and it says 24 grams of sugar, if you don't know any better, which most consumers don't, only 1 out of 3 consumers actually look at a label when they buy a food. So most consumers are not even looking at a label. But if you look at the label and it says 24 grams of sugar, you have no idea. Is 24 grams good? Is it not? And
Is it?
well, if you're a woman, your limit of sugar in a day is 24 grams. If you're male, it's 36 grams. So it just depends on your sex, how much, sugar you've had in the day. But that's kind of my point, where that label is not helpful. Because you have to go and study. Like, it's not a very easy tool for any consumer to utilize. And, in my opinion, I think it's
Okay,
by
so
design.
but okay, so if we could give something to someone today, what are the 2 or 3 points that you could show or point them into to be able to pick better things for their family and themselves? Is it
Yeah.
like going to the organic area and there?
So there's a couple of things. So number one is just kind of look at where you're at right now. So when you go to the grocery store, before you check out and you pay, just look at your cart. How much of that is whole foods? How much of that is fruits and vegetables and meats and eggs and oil and herbs and spices and beans and rice? So how much of it is that, and how much of it is in a packet? So how much Pop-Tarts are you buying? How much cereal are you buying? How much bread? How much ice cream? Muffins? Whatever. Candy. So just kind of assess that. and then try to increase the amount of whole foods that you're purchasing. So that would be number one. Try to stay in those aisles that are more whole foods. Number two, if you do go to the aisles where there's going to be packaged food, because like I'm not denying we all like our treats, try to choose one with better ingredients. So look at the ingredients. Make sure that those are less than 10 ingredients, that they're ingredients you can pronounce, you know exactly what they are.
Mm-hmm.
And then three, look at the nutrition. So, of course, try to get no trans fat, lower sugar is always going to be better for you. Higher fiber is always good. But just try to make your processed food consumption lower. I mean, if you can get to like, the goal would be like maybe 10%, which I know for some people that could be really hard.
10% of the
of
the
your
cart.
of your cart, that would be amazing. But that's the main thing. Just start trying to buy more whole foods, because at the end of the day, like the packaged foods, they're processed foods, right? They're indulgences, not everyday kind of food.
So when you mentioned trans fat, but I've seen saturated fat.
Yeah.
What's the difference between? Like I
So
see total fat and then those other ones.
yeah, so trans fat was made more like in a lab. So it's kind of like man-made. It does occur naturally in some foods, but there's a lot of research now that shows that trans fat is not good. There's no benefit to it. Saturated fat occurs naturally in animal products. It's also in coconut oil as well.
Saturated fat.
So trans fat are no good. They're made in a lab.
Correct.
And then saturated fats.
Saturated fats occur naturally in
Okay.
animal products as well as coconut oil.
Okay.
So saturated fat, there's also a lot of research that saturated fat increases cholesterol.
Mm-hmm.
So it is, the American Heart Association recommends less than 10% of your calories from saturated fat.
And sugar. Is
Yeah.
there any health benefit to sugar?
Health benefits?
Yeah.
Define health benefit.
Like, is there any? Do we need it in our lives? I mean, like we need carbs, right? Or
Well,
we need protein.
Sugar is a carbohydrate.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. Just because when you talk about carbohydrates, now we're talking about like glucose. But in terms of nutritional value, sugar doesn't have any vitamins or minerals or sugar itself, a molecule. Like, it doesn't. It provides energy. So if you're in need of like calories, but other than that, there's no health benefit. And there's actually there's the Sugar Association and like all the it's just the Sugar Association that they make. They're the association for sucrose sugar, which comes from beet sugar and sugar cane. They've tried to do studies to see if there's any benefit to sugar, because that would be amazing for the sugar industry, and they haven't found any yet, because I'm sure if they did, we would know. We would know about them. So yeah, what I also find very interesting is that these different sugars have their own associations and their own like interest groups. So cane sugar has a sugar association, and they don't like each other. You guys have heard of high fructose corn syrup?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so there's a I'm gonna get it wrong.
That comes from corn, right?
High fructose corn syrup comes from corn, and they are called
What's in the name?
the Corn Refiners Association. I just didn't want to get it wrong. So Corn Refiners Association, they are backing corn, obviously. And when we had high fructose corn syrup, they actually wanted to categorize high fructose corn syrup as sugar, or just call it sugar. And the Sugar Association got offended, and they pretty much kind of like fought and didn't allow them to use the word sugar. Because as a consumer, what you have to think about is, as a consumer, if I just read the word sugar, to me it might not be any different, but it may actually be high fructose corn syrup. So the corn industry may be earning more money versus the sugar industry.
Okay, so, but there's a lot of political stuff going on. There's a lot of marketing dollars that go
Yeah.
into it. But for a guy like me, I just want to cut through the chase and get what's most healthy for my family and I.
Yeah.
Because I don't have the privilege of having studied like you have and, have these degrees and you've gone into deep, into all this stuff. So I just want to get what's the most healthy thing. And the most healthy thing, according to what you're saying, is in your cart, see as much as whole foods
Mm-hmm.
as possible, um, less canned or boxed things that are potentially processed. Be aware more of the process, and then look
Correct.
at the labels and see if you can identify something that may be more natural. Um,
Well, I think that it's more teach a man to fish.
right.
When you realize like how much money and interest and go into the marketing and the design of a label and the design of even whether it's called sugar or high fructose or,
Yeah.
but the consumer doesn't know that going in. They don't know that how bad high fructose is for you or all these things. So like, it's cool to hear that side of it because it makes people question and not maybe not trust as much the label or the company because
Mm-hmm.
if not you're just going to have someone telling you what to order every day instead of actually you making the
I
decision yourself,
I
right?
understand, but what do you mean not trust the label? The label, it's how you gonna judge the product you're buying if you're
Yeah, like
aside from looking at the
you
But
have to
because
research,
a
no, I
right?
know, but you say you're looking at, for example, apples, pears, this and bananas. Like right now, I go to the organic banana area, okay, and I try to buy organic banana and as much organic as I possibly can,
Right,
okay.
right.
Um, they don't have a label, but they're whole food. But now you get into I've seen a couple of podcasts where, they have little stickers, and if it starts with a 9, that means something. If it starts with a 6, it means something else.
So if it starts with the 9, it means organic. If it starts with the 4, it means conventional, which not organic.
Okay, so if it starts with the, yeah, but how do you, I mean, the average consumer, do you think they know this?
They don't, and but one of the reasons why I love sharing about this is so people are more conscious. Like you have to be aware. Like
Mm-hmm.
you just have to because nobody you have to be proactive in taking care of your health and knowing that a lot of what you read in the packaged food is pure marketing. It's there to get you to purchase that food product. And when you look at the nutrition fact panel, it's confusing. So that's also not helping you, but
Mm-hmm.
so I understand what you mean. Like you just want something that's easier. I'm just kind of sharing this for people who just don't know any better. And because
Right,
I
right.
was like that, like growing up, we didn't know any better. We bought a lot of food that was processed.
Yeah, but you brought up a really good point about the fact that everything has been changing.
Yep.
And the year when this other thing was created, well, the guy could be drinking out of a water hose and not have all the stuff that's in there,
No.
because we need to purify water. And so now we've got a lot more stuff in it than we used to have 30 years ago. So that's
Yeah.
that's an excellent point. So that kind of defeats that kind of a combat. In other words, when somebody says, "Hey, we grew up doing this and that," I'm a believer of that
Mm-hmm.
until now.
Mm-hmm.
When you mention that, because it definitely has changed.
Mm-hmm.
All these impurities that get added on, even from, it's yeah, and you're right. The person has to get involved, and
Yeah, and when you say organic, you said it's non-GMO and then it has no pesticides.
correct.
Mm-hmm.
So non-GMO is it wasn't lab modified, non-genetically modified, right? It's just naturally grows this way. Is that what the idea behind it is?
Yeah. So there's only I don't remember exactly the number of crops, but maybe like 9 or 10
Uh-huh.
crops that are genetically modified. Corn is one of them. Soy is another one. So it's not all of the ingredients, but basically it just means if it's organic, it doesn't have one of these less than 15 crops that have been genetically modified. That's what it means.
Got it. And so those are the like if someone's not able to buy organic, so let's say it's not at their store,
Mm-hmm.
like GMO or not GMO because that's not the cancer
Well,
causing, but isn't glyphosate known to cause cancer, or is that something that's not?
there are some studies that show it's hard because you can't say correlation or connection like you know, um, but there are some studies that point to glyphosate not being healthy for us. So one of the biggest one that isn't as controversial, but I think is important, is that um, we don't have like a system to deal with glyphosate like in our body. So the idea was that it would just come out, you know, when you have a bowel movement. But in our gut, we have bacteria, and the bacteria actually process the glyphosate. So glyphosate changes the type of bacteria that you have in your gut, which can hurt your health. So there may be some connection there through which I think we don't have to get into like, you know, things like cancer and stuff like that or go too far. Like there are studies that show that it does affect your gut, and we know so much about our gut health now and how much that affects, you know, our brain health and our blood sugar and like all these different things. So there's that connection with genetically modified crops and our gut health.
So
Yeah.
how do you maintain a healthy gut?
One of the biggest thing you can do is consume fibers and a diverse amount of fibers. That just translates into eat more fruits and vegetables. That's like
Fiber
the
comes
simplest.
from fruits and veggies.
Yeah,
Okay.
the simplest way. Physical activity also increases the diversity of your gut bacteria. So
Oh well.
that's another thing you can do. Um, yeah, yeah.
And
That's the
so,
easiest.
because I've heard you mention that when you take a
Probiotic.
no, a antibiotic, like a lot of times we get prescribed antibiotics.
Mm-hmm.
What is it that it's actually doing to the gut?
So it's getting rid of some of that bacteria. It's an antibiotic, so it's getting rid of some of that bacteria. So that's where you can think of your gut as having. It's basically like a world, and you have different countries, and some countries are good, some countries are bad. So when you take an antibiotic and everybody was at certain numbers and can control each other, it can take out the good guys, and the bad guys can increase in number, and that can cause inflammation and you know affect blood sugar balance. There's so much that the gut does, or the bacteria in the gut contribute to. So that's kind of what's happening. So you just want to there's different recommendations whether you take a probiotic, not at the same time, obviously, or take a probiotic after you take your antibiotic. That's something people can do. Eat more fiber. It's always a good thing.
Because fiber is not processed by the
Yeah.
stomach, right?
So we don't absorb fiber. So our fiber just goes through our small intestine, large intestine, and we poop it out. But the bacteria in our gut eat the fiber, and then they'll produce these different metabolites that are very beneficial to our health. One of the most well-known ones is short-chain fatty acids, which just help you have a healthy colon, a healthy blood sugar. So the bacteria eat the fiber, and that's what helps them diversify and just keep our gut healthy. That's why we need fiber.
Interesting.
Very good.
Yeah.
Cool. What you after your schooling and everything, and you say that you continued a lot of studies afterwards, things that necessarily you didn't learn in school, right?
Mm-hmm.
What was, let's say, one of the most eye-opening things for you that was maybe like a shock when you did a little bit more research on your own or specialized studies? Is there something in particular that kind of like was like a shock, or wasn't really,
Something that you expected or unexpected.
Yeah.
Well, I've done studies in like blood sugar and like gut health, but one of the biggest things is kind of what I was sharing today, just learning how the food industry influences what we purchase and how we're really unaware of it. You think it's you making a choice, but there was, meetings and money put into this. And I say this because I worked for like community clinics, and then I've worked on my own, and I've learned so much about nutrition. But at the end of the day, people are faced with this problem of, I go to the grocery store, I'm looking at all these foods, I don't know which one to buy, because we get so much information, and a lot of it is addicting. And it's frustrating for people. And it's frustrating for me as a nutrition professional too. But knowing that many of the research done on food is actually funded by the food industry. And if they get good results, if having sugar cane is better than high fructose corn syrup, they have a PR team. So guess what? You're hearing about it in the news. My mom's hearing about it in the news and calling me and thinking she can now have sugar cane, right? So that's kind of how the system works. And once you learn how it works, you're able to step back and make your own decisions, make your own food choices. And it matters because our health matters. And, like I mentioned when I started, 90% of the sugar that people consume is coming from these foods. It's such a huge deal if you're even able to cut that by 50%. It's such a lifesaver in terms of your health. So I would say that's the biggest thing, because that's what people face every day when they go to the grocery store.
Yeah, and when you go to the grocery store, um, you're somewhat assuming that everything that's there is healthy because
Yeah.
it's been checked by the Food and Drug Administration. They have a seal of approval, and you just don't stop to think. My interpretation is, wow, this has a tremendous amount concentration of sugar, and this is going to be bad. The other thing is that usually when I go to the grocery store, I don't have a lot of time.
Yeah.
So I'm just zooming by and,
Mm-hmm.
picking up as many things as I can. I don't have a lot of time to look at the labels and try to organize the stuff.
Yeah.
And like I tell you, I just go directly to as much organic as I possibly can. The same thing goes for eggs.
Mm-hmm.
Farm raised or this raised or pasteurized or
Cage-free.
cage free and all this stuff. The other day I had a little bit of time, and there are all kinds of assorted stuff when it comes to eggs, and you want to pick and you're going, you know. So basically, what I'm getting from you is that take a look at your cart, take a look at how much of whole foods you have in there as opposed to packaged stuff. Try to stick to the organic stuff. It's challenge.
It is a challenge.
It's a challenge for everybody out there.
Yeah,
Wow.
it is.
Is there anything else you want to share with us in terms of new things that you're learning in the nutrition world, or?
No, I mean, that was pretty much
Okay.
it,
Then
I would
what
say.
we'll do is
Okay.
we'll invite you again, so you can talk to us a little bit more about diabetes.
Okay.
Because on your business cards you have it all over the place. So I know you've done a lot of study on diabetes, so we can come on back and continue.
Sounds good. Thank you for having me.
Thank you very
We'll
much.
wrap it up there. If you can help me with that, just
How do I
take
do
it.
it?
Just scroll down a little bit.
Here?
Right there.